Okay, we're live on the great modern day debate and everything. And today we have a debate between Guzman 1611 and Gregory. And today we're going to be talking about evolution. And we're going to talk about if it's true or not. And pretty much what's going to happen is that Gregory is for the affirmative and Guzman is for the non-affirmative. So Gregory is actually going to start off with his introduction right now. And then afterwards, we're going to give a discussion between the two. And also check out the live chat. Stay in the live chat. Keep me updated in the live chat if you guys have anything. Also, don't forget about the super chats. Feel free to put in anything if you have a super chat and everything. And I will personally have those saved and followed up so that I can save them till the end, because we also have a Q&A at the end. So you guys, Gregory, whenever you're ready, and people in the live audience, if you ever have any questions or if you ever want to send in a super chat, again, fill it in, put it in, anything like that, and let's get this thing started. Gregory, if you want to start, you go right ahead.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Guzman, for being willing to debate me. Okay, so my first line of evidence that I'm going to start with is the human chromosome 2. So the study that links this to biological evolution is origin of human chromosome 2 and ancestral telomere-telomere fusion. So what the study found is that chromosome 2, which is unique to the human lineage of evolution, emerged as the result of the head-to-head fusion of two ancestral chromosomes that remain separate in other primates. So the evidence in the study is like this. One, that the dye pattern of human chromosome 2 matches that of two separate chromes, which are found in apes, one chimp chromosome 2, and an extra chromosome that doesn't match any other human chromosome. A chromosome also typically has one centromere, but the point where the chromosome's two identical strands are joined, but these remnants of a second, presumably inactive centromere can be found on the human chromosome 2. And another thing is that whereas most normal chromosomes have been identified, repeating these DNA sequences, which are the telomeres at both ends, these chromosome 2 telomere sequences can be found not only at the ends, but also in the middle. So since this dye pattern of human chromosome 2 matches two separate chromosomes which are found in apes, which is chimp chromosome 2 and the other one that doesn't match any other human chromosome, we can presume a common ancestor that's been found with chimps and humans, since they have such a connection in the human chromosome 2, which is something that's defined as junk DNA. The next evidence I'm going to present is evidence for fossils. So let's start off. So one, the fact is that the Ardipithecus species began and bipedal walking started to develop, and they found that the fossils are 4 million years old, and they use this to argon. And what argon dating is basically a method which determines the origin of rocks by measuring the ratio of radioactive argon to radioactive potassium. If you're doing argon-argon dating, then you use only one variable, which is argon. They found the evidence of stone tool making in Homo habilis to also be 2.6 million years old using argon and paleomagnetism. So what paleomagnetism dating does is compare the direction of the magnetic particles in layers of the sediment to the worldwide shift in the Earth's magnetic field. They also found through argon and paleomagnetism that Homo erectus lived around 1.8 million years ago. And and the next thing is that they also found evolutionary expansions of the brain, which started from around 800,000 years ago to all the way to 200,000 years ago. And what they found is there's argon-uranium series and paleomagnetism. For all of you who don't know what uranium series dating is, uranium series dating basically calculates an age from the degree of which secular equilibrium has been restored between a radioactive variable and a given parent within a sample. They also found the emergence and extinction of Neanderthals and the emergence of Homo sapiens in Africa from 300,000 to 250,000 years ago around. And they found this with thermoluminescence, electron spin resonance, carbon-14 dating, and a molecular genetic clock. So what molecular genetic clock does is basically compute an age based on the rates of genetic mutation over time. Furthermore, to challenge the young Earth creationist view, so I've talked to Guzman before, and he said the Earth is about 6,300 years old, and I would say that's what most young Earth creationists lean towards. And what challenges this is that the origins of agriculture date around 12 to 10,000 years ago, and this is found through carbon-14 dating. And carbon-14 dating basically is a method of determining the age of an object, a given object, let's say X, which contains organic material by using the properties of radiocarbon, burning it and turning it into carbon, and basically use a mass spectrometer, and then you measure when and you measure using a mass spectrometer, and you measure what the proportion of the carbon is, heavy carbon, and then you compute a logarithmic function for exponential decay.
Hey, Gregory.
Yep.
Real quick, can you where's your mic at real quick so that we can just clarify, because it seems like people are having a hard time hearing you just a little bit. Where's your mic at?
My mic?
Yeah.
You want me to take the headphones off? Can you hear me now?
Tell me if that's a lot better, guys, in the live chat real quick, just so that we can make sure that you guys can hear them.
All right, I'll start from the beginning. Evidence from fossils.
Yeah, I could actually hear you. It's just like your microphone was making a lot of scratching noises, which is why I could hear you. But they said that that's better, so just use that real quick.
All right, so can I go from the evidence from fossils?
Go right ahead.
All right. So the evidence of fossils is that, first of all, when the Ardipithecus species began and bipedal walking started to develop, they found that the fossils date around 4 million years ago using argon. And what argon dating does is basically a method which determines the origin of rocks by measuring the ratio of radioactive argon to radioactive potassium if you're doing argon-potassium dating, or they use only one variable, which is argon, if you're doing argon-argon dating. They also found the evidence of stone tool making in Homo habilis to be around 2.6 million years ago, using argon and paleomagnetism. What paleomagnetism dating does is it basically compares the direction of magnetic particles in layers of the sediment to the worldwide shifts in Earth's magnetic field. What they also found through argon and paleomagnetism is also that Homo erectus lived around 1.8 million years ago. They also found that there were evolutionary expansions of the brain, which started from around 800,000 years ago, 800,000, 750,000, all the way to around 200,000 years ago. They found this through argon-uranium series and paleomagnetism. What uranium series does is calculates the nature and the degree to which secular equilibrium has been restored between a radioactive variable and a parent within its sample. They also found the emergence and extinction of Neanderthals and the emergence of Homo sapiens in Africa within 300,000 to 250,000 years ago. And they found this through thermoluminescence, electron spin resonance, carbon-14 dating, and a molecular genetic clock. And what a molecular genetic clock does is compute an age based on the rates of genetic mutation change over time. So furthermore, to challenge the young Earth creationist model, so I've talked to Guzman before, he said that the Earth is about 6,300 years old, and I would say that's what most young Earth creationists have proposed. And another piece of evidence that shows that's unlikely is the origins of agriculture date around 12 to 10,000 years ago. And this was found through carbon-14 dating. And what carbon-14 dating does is it's a method of determining the age of an object containing organic material by using the properties of radiocarbon by burning it and turning it into carbon. And you measure using a mass spectrometer, and then you measure what the proportion of the carbon is heavy carbon, and then you compute a logarithmic function for exponential decay. Another piece of evidence is that cetaceans and hippopotami have very close genetic similarities. Cetaceans are a family that have whales, dolphins, porpoises. I think there's more, and then hippopotami are land mammals. However, they share very rare physical commonalities. For instance, both mammals are nearly hairless, do not have sweat glands, have aberrantly thick bones, are encased in dense fat. They have multi-chambered stomachs. They give birth to their children under the water and also feed their children underwater. So cetaceans and hippopotami didn't evolve from a common ancestor, and these are quite a miraculous coincidence. Yet another line, our next piece of evidence is going to be in the forelimbs of whales. So the forelimbs, fingers, hands, wrists, and arm bones of whales share homologous features with birds, dogs, and humans. They basically share the same homologous over and overall construction. So these can be explained if they are repurposed forelimbs. For instance, these bones have very little in common with non-mammalian fins, but yet have a great deal in common with the forelimbs of land mammals. Another line of evidence that kind of connects to this would be in the hind legs of whales, in which they have like unusual bones which kind of look like shriveled hip, thigh, and shin bones. Whereas land mammals have hind legs, and some of these bones, such as one from a bowhead whale, have ball and socket joints like us. Furthermore, paleontologists have also found numerous species within the fossil record that have unique similarities with whales, but also varying sizes of hind legs. And these would make absolute sense if they were vestigial and repurposed. Okay, our next line of evidence is the left recurrent laryngeal nerve, which is found in humans. So basically, this runs from the brain all the way down to the voice box, which is usually supposed to be within a distance range of a few inches. But instead, it basically goes all the way down to the chest, loops around a main artery, and then goes back up to the voice box, which in the case of the giraffe is a 15-foot drop. However, in animals without a neck, for instance, such as fish, the most direct route for this is navigating around the artery. And this would make sense if mammals evolved from fish-like ancestors, and we can explain this seemingly absurd design within giraffes and humans, this left recurrent laryngeal nerve. Our last piece of evidence is going to be in the tailbone of humans. So this is a relic of the mammalian tail, which is useful for mammals that basically use tails for balance and species-to-species signaling and support. So this tail is not present in apes and humans. But as far as embryology goes, all mammals have a tail at some point in their development. For instance, with humans, it's present for 4 weeks during stages 14 to 22 in human embryogenesis. But this is most prominently present at 31 to 35 days old. And there have been numerous instances of which humans were born with an extended tail, usually with the tail being around 1 to 5 inches, and most of these have been removed. So that's basically my evidence. Have I like gone short of the time?
Yeah, you went over time, but that's okay to make your case and everything. So Guzman, your mic is muted, and whenever you want to start with your questions and discussion with Gregory, you can go right ahead. So just be sure you unmute yourself, and you guys go right ahead.
Okay, awesome. Well, I can tell that Gregory's very well studied. And when we get him over, he's going to be a great young Earth creationist. Well, I have a question. Do I have to respond to what he said, or can we just talk about?
Yes, try to respond to what he said and the evidence that he gave.
Okay, awesome. So you gave a lot of evidence that a lot of evolutionists will give, like fossils from the Australopithecines and the Homo genus.
No,
And
Ardipithecus.
excuse me,
Ardipithecus.
Australopithecus.
Ardipithecus.
Oh, Ardipithecus. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you that well. But there's a lot of and there's a lot of evolutionists who will use these. And what I would say, all you know about an animal, if you find it in the dirt, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
If you find it in the dirt, all you know is that it was that animal. A lot of evolutionists will use archaeopteryx to prove from dinosaurs to birds. Well, what evidence do they have for that other than it has teeth? Other than it has a long tail.
You want me to respond?
No, I'll let you respond in a minute. They don't have that evidence. All they know is that there were archaeopteryxes. That's all they know. And so if I'd like to see if you have like an evidence for archaeopteryx. This is beside all the points that you made, but I'm gonna respond to that in a minute.
I mean, what do you mean archaeopteryx? Like, for instance, the things that they use this through paleontological inference. They find that certain teeth connect to a jaw, and if we have finger bone, for instance, in the toes, then we can use through paleontological inference a foot. It's not just like made up stuff. We can conclude this through paleontological inference. We can't merely go. We can't just say the rest is made up, because it's not made up. It's paleontological inference. Just in the same way you use logical inferences and mathematical inferences. Maybe not in the most obvious way, such as mathematical and logical inference, but paleontological inference uses if you find a toe bone, you can connect it with a foot, and that's basically what paleontological inference does.
Okay, now what I would ask you is, how does that prove common ancestry? Would that better prove or be a statement for common designer? Because Ford makes cars, and they make a lot of cars that are similar. Why? Because it has a good basic outline, sort of. It has a good design. They want to reuse it. So God, who is the common designer, would want to reuse that same design.
All right, so two things. All right, first of all, these, if we have Ardipithecus species, which displays very common similarities, including Ardipithecus, Homo Neanderthals, and Homo habilis. If these have very close genetic similarities and go along the line of evolutionary history, then we can conclude from inference that it's most likely true that there's some kind of evolutionary explanation for them. And two, this is would also challenge the young Earth creationist view, which claims that 6,300 years, that the Earth is essentially 6,300 years old, and we have certain dating which claims that these can go around 4 million, as deep as 4 million years ago. If we're talking about the Ardipithecus species. And as far as Homo habilis goes, around 2.6 million years ago. And for Homo erectus, same story, except 1.8 million years ago. And evolutionary expansions to the brain, which go 800,000 to 200,000 years ago. And so these evolutionary expansions from the brain prove some kind of macroevolution. And the thing I presented with the origins of agriculture dating to around 12 to 10,000 years ago also challenged the younger creationist view of the Earth being 6,300 years old.
So I believe, because you're a Christian, you're a Christian, as we said, as we've spoken before. God would have to have been extremely wasteful if he's gonna create all these creatures that are gonna go extinct in order to create man. We said that we're not gonna include scripture in this, but I'm gonna try to avoid scripture, so I'm not gonna quote this verse. But we see that man could not have survived, could not have lived for how long do you think that man was around? I believe that
Around
for
250,
2 million.
around 250,000 years ago, if we're talking about the Homo sapiens species as a whole. As far as the Homo species goes, it's around 2.5
Yeah,
million.
I'm talking about Homo sapiens.
All right, 250,000 years ago about.
All right. I've even heard evolutionists say 2 or 4 million, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about a wider broad of a species, I guess. But Homo sapiens cannot have survived that long, because of the fact that we are degrading as humans. In each generation, there are about 100 mutations, and so each generation, every 2 generations, that number increases by 1 mutation. We go back. In our model, the 6,300 year model, we believe that we go back 6,000 at 6,300 or 6,000, but are you playing the? Okay, never mind. So we go back all the way to then. So that would be around 250 generations, roughly.
If we're to go by, if we're to go by that standard, yeah.
If we go by 20 or 30 year
if we're to claim that a generation is 100 years old, then yeah.
Yes, 20, 30 years. So that means that we have around 100 mutations per generation, and every 2 generations that number increases. And so Dr. John Sanford, because of these numbers, he predicts that the Homo sapiens species will go extinct within the next 250 to 500 generations, because every 2 generations that number is increasing by 1. So that would be around 18,000 years if we go by that largest number. So 18,000 years, according to geneticists, we could have been around.
Mm-hmm. All right,
as that's the most.
All right, so yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the evolutionary model says that we've been around for, I think you said 200,000 years, right?
As far as Homo sapiens go, 250,000 years, correct?
250,000. Okay, so we cannot have gone back that far because of our degradation of our genome. You have every cell division in your body, because your cells are dividing every moment.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you sleep, that number goes up.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Each cell division has 4 mutations. Gets 4 mutations.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those are beneficial? None, almost none. And I have a source for that. Let me pull it up real quickly. But 9 out of 10 mutations are deleterious. Less than 0.5 mutations, if there are any beneficial mutations, less than 0.5% of those mutations, less than 0.5 percent of those mutations are beneficial, if there is such a thing as beneficial
All right.
mutations.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Yeah. All right. Do you want me to respond to that now?
sure.
All right. So as far as genetic mutations go, and whether or not they would go around 18,000 years old is not a linear graph. They're not. They don't go up alongst a linear line. It's much more complicated than that. In fact, one would be hard pressed to even assign a polynomial equation to these complex variables with the rise of genetic mutation, and well 18,000 years, which is the graph that results from it. So the graph would be more like this and would go down and maybe medium and up. It's crazy. It's not even one. It's even hard to say that it would be a function in and of itself. So that's one. Two. We still have to address the evidence that I gave, the 6 pieces of evidence that I gave, and and as I said earlier, genetic mutation doesn't move along in a linear fashion. In fact, it can trend up or down depending on whatever. So yeah. So we still need to address the 6 pieces of evidence that I gave.
All right. So
Yeah.
I think I will address those right now. So I'll go into that a little bit more later. Am I screen sharing, by the way? I think I turned it off.
Are you screen sharing?
No, you're not screen sharing.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
No, you're
All right.
not.
So okay. So you said that there are a lot of similar. I think I already addressed this earlier. The tailbone you presented, the tailbone isn't evidence. The tailbone, you use it for sitting, and that's very important. I will.
Secondary.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. You can continue.
Uh, the tailbone is still used in humans today. It's not evidence for uh, apes or excuse me, sorry, uh, other creatures that had tailbones with up to or tails up to humans. Humans use the tailbone for a wide variety of reasons. Very important reasons like sitting, obviously, and so if that is a vestigial organ, which vestigial, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means without purpose. It means that it doesn't have a purpose. So if we have a vestigial structure or a structure without purpose, then the tailbone isn't a vestigial structure. And again, we talked about this a while back. This would be a result of junk DNA. Junk DNA is 80% or 90% unknown about, so we're still trying to unravel that
All right.
mess. And so
Yeah. Do you want me to
that
respond? Sorry.
sure, if you want.
All right. Okay. So these are actually secondary functions sitting down, and these they're still a relic of the mammalian tail, such as present in embryology. We have tails at some point, and some people were born with tails, which is 1 to 5 inches. And so these don't really these can't help for sitting, but they're really secondary in this. They're really a secondary function in this sense. The primary function actually is a relic of the mammalian tail, because in embryology we have a tail at some point, but it shrinks down to nothing. And with some people, they have the genetic mutation of which they're born with 1 to 5. They're born with a tail being with an extended tailbone. Essentially, they have a tail, and I've met a couple people that have this tailbone. So these don't just serve a secondary function for just sitting down. They have another. They're still vestigial in this sense, primarily vestigial because they're a relic of the mammalian tail, and as embryological and evidence and well, people having tails. So this would not just be explained by the fact that they sit down and they somehow grow a tail within embryology and basically within the various instances of people who have had tails. So we can't just assign tailbone as we can't just merely propose it as it's merely secondary, and the primary and it's primarily vestigial.
Did not God create? Oh, I'm pretty sure you don't believe this, but in the creation model, God created land animals and man on the same day, day 6. And so I'm pretty sure God would use the same structures and put that uh, gene inside humans for probably a particular purpose. I don't know why God might have put that gene inside, and sometimes it activates in certain humans because of genetic mutation that turns it on. But God probably put it in there for a purpose. The Bible talks about genetic mutations in the book of First Samuel, I believe, or Second Samuel. And the Bible talks about the giants who have 6 fingers on each hand, and so I mean, we have the gene for a six finger. Okay, we have the gene for a 6 finger. What does that mean? There are people in South America who have genes for 2 feet, for two, t- sorry, two toes, 2 toes. The ostrich people only have 2 toes because they're interbreeding, and you know, there's something in genetics that can possibly turn on or off a gene. I'm not sure what it is. I haven't looked into that much, but I'm just gonna have to say
Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. So
Uh.
uh you know I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. You want me to respond to that?
I don't know the explanation for the tailbone.
Okay.
I've given what I think about the tailbone, and I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But I believe that God has given us the gene to turn and at certain times and certain situations to turn on that gene to grow a tailbone. I mean
Okay.
to grow a tail.
All right. Okay. So we can't just invoke possibilistic explanations. I would favor probabilistic explanations over possibilistic explanations, as that would
I
entail
know.
the fallacy of possibility. Possibility does not entail probability, because I'm underlying probabilistic explanations, which is this is a relic of the mammalian tail, as the embryological and personal evidence shows, and this is a relic of human evolution. We can't just assume. We can pull any explanation we want. That's a possibility, but we ultimately need to show probability for it. I could say Satan, whatever, some other god. We could say this made the genes. This box created. It's like we can invoke as many possibilistic explanations as we want, but ultimately, possibility does not entail probability. Like I said earlier,
Exactly.
and the embryological and personal
Sorry.
evidence. Sorry, the embryological and personal evidence shows we can't. We have to go by the probabilistic explanation more so than the possibilistic explanations. As I would assume there are an infinite amount of possibilistic explanations for anything that you propose, for anything that one can propose.
Right, and I agree. That's why I said I don't know. And so uh I didn't write down all your points. I'm sorry, but
That's okay. Don't worry.
so do you want to talk about something else now, or can I give my
Do you,
stance
do
sort
you
of?
want? Do you want to? Do you want to talk about like the left recurrent laryngeal nerve that detours and loops around that goes down to the chest and loops around the main artery and goes all the way back up to the voice box?
Well, I'd respond to that because I'd respond to that as you know God put that in there, and I've given the same response to those things, but
Okay.
I've I wouldn't have if I knew that you were gonna bring that up.
Okay.
Oh wait,
Again,
am I mute? Oh no, never mind.
no,
Okay, so
again, you see, again, you see, you're proposing possibilistic explanations when we have to go for the
yeah, I know.
probable explanations rather than the possible explanations. We can have an infinite, as I said earlier, we can have an infinite amount of possible explanations. God designed it purposefully 6,300 years ago, or we could say that these are a relic of a mammalian tail from an evolution from evolution, and we can't just merely propose. Again, we can't propose possible explanations. We have to go for probable explanations. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm repeating myself too much.
no, it's okay. So I'd like to bring up what I've researched in genetics the past week for the past week. Um, what genetics has, I believe, proven that random uh, evolution by random mutational chance cannot be possible. National Geographic did an
I would
article.
agree. I would agree, definitely. Definitely, I think neo-Darwinian evolution combined with Mendelian genetics on its own does not it cannot completely account for the facts. But what I believe in evolution is that there's a certain level of process selection combined with neo-Darwinian evolution, which is basically Mendelian genetics combined with original Darwinian thinking, which proposes natural laws, which could leave open a theistic framework for evolution. And I would say the evidence that for natural laws that are rising is increasing by the day for science. So I would definitely agree with you that pure random genetic mutation on its own would not completely solve it. And I think most even atheistic philosophers, paleontologists, every people who evolutionists would all accept this, that there's a certain degree of process selection to it. Meaning natural laws, not exactly God-given laws, but natural laws combined with neo-Darwinian evolution. So, and I think, and some have shown that it's very, very unlikely that pure random genetic mutation on its own would arrive at something like this. But so there is a level of process selection to it. Yes, I would agree with you.
Right. There's and can you see my screen?
It's kind of yeah. I can see your screen. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Well, National Geographic did an article called Human Evolution 101. You can type this in. I don't know if you want to type it in, but just look up Human Evolution 101 National Geographic or Nat Geo. But they say that they were talking about evolution previously. I was going to put in the entire um, quote in here, but I didn't want to use too much space. The DNA that makes up our genes and those of every organism on Earth, except some viruses, is subject to random mutation. So obviously we have RNA viruses and things like that. There are no beneficial mutations though, almost, and if there are, they're rare. And who cares if there are any beneficial mutations at all?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to account for the 9 out of 10 deleterious mutations.
Right.
0.5 out of 10 are beneficial or neutral or near neutral. So obviously, this mutations are actually why we die, because the deleterious mutations, they counterbalance the good ones. And why would even if there are beneficial mutations that like give us an extra leg so that we can walk extra faster, I don't know, or an an extra arm so that we can grab more things or whatever. How would that help if they were in the spots that we do not need them in? Like there's a leg on our head. Okay, I have an extra leg now. I can run faster, except it's on my head, or an arm, or a thumb behind your back. Sometimes you need a thumb to help you.
Okay, okay,
So
so, okay. So there's okay. So all right, two things. First of all, I would definitely say that's incorrect to say that none of them are beneficial. And second of all, it can't be. Oh, second of all, it can't be that that a lot of them are not beneficial. But random mutations are not the only thing that make up evolution. The certain there's certain rare mutations that help benefit that are beneficial result in evolution. That's generally how biology works. So there's still definitely some beneficial genes. We can't say that there are absolutely no beneficial genes, beneficial mutations. Sorry, and that would be, I think, to deny basic scientific fact. So. No.
and I said I acknowledged beneficial mutations, except that they're very extremely rare, as
Right,
I
right.
showed in the. And also, you have to remember that natural selection is not a creative force.
What do you mean natural selection is not a creative force?
Natural selection by just mere chance uh is not isn't gonna it's a part in basically creativity, I guess.
Right, I get right,
But these
right. I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. And that's more chasing out at a purely neo-Darwinian perspective of evolution, and other theories of evolution like niche construction, process selection, and various others can I would say definitely account what I would say account for those facts. But I think you're chasing something that's not really broad scope of the theory of the various theories of evolution.
so you agree that I brought this up earlier because of all the genetics and uh, the mutations, so many deleterious mutations, and the errors that occur within every two generations. You agree that I didn't really hear you acknowledge that. Do you mind giving your view on all the deleterious on the John Sanford's prediction that the humans will go extinct within the 250 to 500 generations, or Alex Williams, who believes that the human race will go extinct 1.5 million excuse me 1.5 million years after Adam, which is
Right. Okay. So, all right. So, what I was going to say is that it's not even remotely close to a linear graph. That would result if we're to calculate the years based on genetic mutation rates over time. That they would be more. That again, as I said earlier, it's not even. We can't even describe it with a function. It'd be more like it. It'd be more like going up or down, kind of like stocks in some sense. It's much crazier than a linear prediction, as John Williams, I forget what his name is, would claim it to be. So yeah.
okay. So, we talked about this on the phone. I think it was a week ago about junk DNA. We said that it was very largely unknown. Junk DNA, though, I forgot. I think I put this in my slides. Let me look through it. Where is it? I think I put it in my slides somewhere. Well, I'd like to ask you real quickly. I guess my question would be, why would you disagree with the Bible on Genesis?
I don't disagree
From
with
a biblical on the Bible standpoint. Like, I guess we can. I guess I'd like to diverge from science a little bit and just
and
talk
enter into
about the
more
Bible
theological
for
grounds.
like for a few minutes. I'd like to know your stance.
Right. All right, so
The
I don't reject Genesis entirely. I would reject
I
a literalist interpretation of Genesis. I would assume a more metaphorical standpoint for Genesis, as as I would say the context shows. I don't have the proper research in that area, but but I would say that's a little bit diverging from the topic. Let's stay on the topic of scientific evidence for evolution, because when we get into theological grounds, that gets into more subjective grounds rather than science, which is more objective in this standpoint.
all right, sure. So, the Bible says that we came from two people, Adam and Eve. That has been backed up by the discovery of Y chromosome, Adam, and mitochondria, Eve.
Right.
And these, I'm curious. Who do you think that mitochondria, Eve, and Y chromosome, Adam were? Like, were they
Mitochondrial Eve and mitochondrial Adam are 300,000 years old.
Y chromosome, Adam?
Right. Y chromosome Adam and Y chromosome Eve. Okay, keep in mind that so keep in mind that these genetic dates are actually over 300,000 years old, and that these are actually metaphorical things that are referring to female and male genetic setters from different parts of Africa, and eventually met to create more more genetics coming from Homo sapiens, which resulted in more of the Homo sapiens species. So this is not in any way have anything to do with creationism. This would actually entail more evolution rather than young Earth creationism, as it proposes that the Earth is actually that the genetics here are 300,000 years old, way more than 6,300 years old, as you propose.
No, I'm asking. Who do you think Y chromosome, Adam, and mitochondria, Eve were? Like, were they?
You see, the problem is that they're not really people. They're representations in some sense of. These are genetic representations of evolutionary history, which took about the rapid expansion of the Homo sapiens species, resulted from the majority of women from one area to the majority of men meeting together and creating more human species. to the state. That was basically the metaphorical representation of that. It's not to be taken in a literal context, and even if it were, it would show that it's 300,000 years old rather than 6,300 years old, as you propose.
All right. So you also brought up uh carbon dating, right? I
Uh-huh.
believe, or
Right? Carbon 14
well,
dating.
and carbon 14 dating, and I discussed this with Nakasuchi, the raging atheist,
Mhm.
and he agreed. There are faulty assumptions that go along with any kind of dating, whether it be uranium dating or anything like or something like that. But uh, but not to diverge on the subject. I want to go back to that subject. But when's our time up,
Our time,
Hunter?
sorry, Hunter.
You
When's our
guys
time?
actually still have about 18 minutes if you guys want to keep going on.
Oh,
Mhm.
cool. Okay,
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so you
cool.
have plenty of time.
All right. Okay. So basically, what I
All
would
right.
respond. All right. So basically, what I'd respond to that is that. So first of all, there may be faulty assumptions that go with anything in the world, but these still are these are well established scientific and archaeological and paleontological of well established paleontological ways of forms of dating. And they use mass spectrometers to calculate the logarithmic function for exponential decay to figure out whether carbon is heavy carbon, and then that would result in dating. And and these are proper, and these mass spectrometers, they show something. We can't just deny basic archaeological and paleontological facts about given objects on carbon 14 dating. For instance, in uranium series, we
Did
calculate we can.
Gregory go out?
Did I go out?
No, he's still there. Um, is Can you not hear him or anything?
Uh,
Okay.
can you hear me?
I think I lost you at the end. I think it was like the last 10 or 15 seconds.
Yeah.
But can you hear him now?
I can hear you now, but I lost the last 15 seconds
Okay, yeah, just
of
repeat what you
your.
had to say, Gregory. If you have any more trouble, just let me know.
Yeah. All right. So as far as carbon 14 dating goes, we use a mass spectrometer, which is a well-established scientific and paleontological method of calculating a logarithmic function for exponential decay, which, using the properties of radiocarbon, burn it, and we use with a mass spectrometer whether this carbon is heavy carbon or not. That's carbon 14 dating. And with the uranium series, we use mathematical calculations to calculate the degree to which secular equilibrium was restored between a radioactive variable and its parent within a given sample. And argon dating basically compares a ratio. If we're doing argon potassium dating, then we measure the ratio of radioactive argon to radioactive potassium. Otherwise, we would use one variable. If we're doing argon dating, I would say within the archaeological field, argon potassium dating is started. So I think that's what they use for this. So so they compare ratio to this, and this is all mathematical. And paleomagnetism is basically with physics, which they compare the direction of the magnetic particles and layers of sediments, basically to the worldwide shifts in Earth's magnetic field. So basically, these are well-established methods, and to reject this is to basically reject basic paleontology and archaeology.
When have you heard of the Shroud of Turin?
Have I heard the what?
The Shroud of Turin.
Sorry. Can you say that again? Sorry.
The Shroud of Turin. The famous towel from the
Yeah.
Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Do you believe it's genuine?
I don't know. I would assume so. I don't. Well, I mean, what do you think? What do you think?
They did a now this is coming from your stamp. I would argue this from your standpoint, even if carbon dating were reliable. Carbon dating tests were done on the shroud, and it dated to come around the medieval age, and not the time of Christ, 2,000 years ago. So if you're gonna accept carbon dating on fossils or on carbon dating on rocks that have been dated to be millions of years old, then you're gonna have to accept the conclusion from the scientists that have dated the Shroud of Turin to be only roughly 500 to 600 years
2,000
old.
years ago? The first churches weren't built exactly 2,000 years ago. They were built a little bit from that, first of all. wouldn't this? Second of all, even if this were true, then wouldn't it show that carbon-14 dating is too early? That would mean that it's actually more than that's actually much earlier than what the carbon-14 dating would propose. And third of all, I'm not sure about the way that they did this, and I'm not sure maybe whether it is genuine or not. I would, if real carbon testing was done on this subject, which was done on evolution, then I would probably conclude it to be around the date of the Middle Ages. So rather than 2,000 years ago. And also, how do you
All
account for the various other methods of use with fossils?
Now, first of all, if you're going to rely on something that can't date something accurately, that's only 600 years old, which is the medieval times, I believe, 1,000 years back.
Yeah, no, it can actually go all the way back to when the Middle Ages started, which was around, I would say 476 AD, which is a while back. That can
Right.
And if it was around 476 AD, it doesn't necessarily have to be from the 1400s. Then it would be a very close time frame, and I would say that carbon-14 dating did a really good job there in showing when and basically showing the date of the church, essentially, if it was that old. So,
So I mean, the assumptions that I bring up are how much carbon was in the animal before it died. If it was consuming this, because we absorb carbon when we eat and when we drink liquids and when we breathe, we absorb that carbon.
yeah, but
And
the
so,
carbon, but we're measuring the proportion of the carbon to heavy carbon, and we're trying to figure out its exponential decay. It has absolutely nothing to do with the consumption of carbon, as we're measuring exponential decay here, and we how this carbon became heavy carbon, essentially. Yeah.
You're measuring how much it has decayed. That is assuming that you know how much carbon was in the creature or in the fossil before it died.
Not necessarily. We're just measuring. Not necessarily. It wouldn't be that much of a variation over the course of Okay, if we're talking about carbon dating, then this would be 12 to 10,000 years ago. This is a while back, and the evolutionary expansion to the brain, which was 800,000 to 200,000 years ago. This is a way while back. So the variance between how much they would have been basically irrelevant. So the rest is just a large exponential decay. So essentially, think of it like this: if we were to do it on a large scale graph, we wouldn't see anything. If we get very, very, very big down into the graph, then we'd see slight variation, but only slight variation, since the amount of carbon in the species is actually the amount of carbon. So yeah, the amount of carbon in the species is almost irrelevant to the fact that it basically decays on a much larger scale than any slight variation would occur between the species during the time of consumption of carbon.
All right, so there's a difference between heavy carbon and just the carbon that we consume with our bodies.
No,
And,
no. I'm just saying that it may be the same kind of carbon, and I can grant you that, but there would be only slight variation of the course of the large exponential decay which occurs on the graph, right?
All right. And so why do you think that a mammal, land mammal turning into a sea mammal is reasonable?
Land mammal turning into a sea. What do you mean?
Like Myocetus, they claim, or no, wait, that's
various genetic mutations combined without assumed natural loss from process selection result in the ability to walk on land, and this would take the course of billion years. It's not like just like one day they just popped up. It's like a random genetic mutation over time combined with prior genetics would result in the ability to walk on land, which resulted in the divergence between land mammals and sea mammals.
Now you're using two rescue devices: random genetic mutations and time.
And,
Ran
no, I didn't just use random genetic mutation. I also incorporated process selection with natural laws.
Right, and past genetic information. So, how would those like create something as big? Because there's a I forgot what it was called. I think it's Racacetus, something above those lines. It's the size of a wolf. It was the size of a wolf from about, I believe it's, I forgot the exact age and all the specific details, but the size of a wolf compared to a blue whale is a large difference. What genetic?
Say that again. I didn't catch it exactly.
Oh, the size of a wolf between and a whale is a huge difference. So a blue whale, I'm sorry, a blue whale is a huge difference. Now, if I were to say that I believe that that little creature can turn into the size of a blue whale in an instant, that would be a fairy tale. But if I said, okay, give it
It
some
wouldn't
time,
magically change. It would go over millions. It would go over
right,
of millions of years
millions of years,
through
millions of years, like
through random mutation and process selection.
right, millions of years with the process selection. So that is now scientific. Well, because you would say that the all the how would you say it? All the scientists have figured out all the math and that it's out there for the public to see. You know, you can pick up the news and you can pick up the
You can pick up any
computer.
right. You can pick up any study and calculate the logarithmic function if you have the underlying knowledge. Yeah.
Right. So I hear a little bit of feedback. Does anybody else hear that? No, it's just me. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm good over here.
okay. So you give it a little bit of time, and then with process selection, with random with genetic mutations, it will turn into a blue whale or a cetacean.
No, when I was bringing that example, I was bringing up cetaceans and hippopotami. I was not talking about wolves.
Right. No. I'm talking about whale evolution because that's one of the greatest proofs for evolution in the evolutionary standpoint. But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the cetacean evolution has been used, but here's the thing: when they put that in the textbooks, when they put wolf-like animals as proof for them turning into whales, when they first did that in the textbooks, that was like, I believe it was 1970s. They started putting that in the textbooks, and then they barely gave any insight on the creatures, and back then they only had a few pieces of the skull and a few bones. Well, now they have more bones. So what do we do with that? Well, there was a certain creature, I believe, I'm referring back to Racacetus, or it's something about those lines, Racacetus. They found, they supposedly found almost a complete skeleton, but there were, I think it was around 10 bones that they found that happened to have been found 500 feet above where the other one was, all the other bones were found. And evolutionists believe that, the deeper you go, the further back in time you go. So how could they say that certain specimens, but and so they don't even know that that those bones belong to the same creature because they were scattered and that they were found in. Oh, okay. He's
Yeah, keep going. You're good.
okay. Okay. Oh, okay. I was just reading that. So they say that the further you go into the ground, the further back in time you go. So 500 feet is a lot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why would they count that as evidence if they were found in totally different places?
It's not totally. It's not exactly totally different places. It's just 500 feet. I would actually think through millions of years that fossils would separate at some point. So I wouldn't.
How do they know? How do they know that? You go. Sorry.
Yeah. If I mean, I would dispute it if one was found in North Africa and the other like somewhere in Southern Africa. But These were found 500 feet apart. That's literally that's not that much. That's not that much. That's 200. That's basically 200 meters, and not maybe not 200. Yeah, something around there. And I would not exactly dispute that because
I'm
that would be the result of paleontological and fossil separation. Yeah.
and I would believe the same thing that and the more that I guess if you were talking from that standpoint, the more time you give it, the further apart they go. But I'm talking about like in depthness. They found the cluster of bones here, and then they found a cluster of bones up here, 500 feet apart, and they say that from the same specimen. How do they know that that's from the same specimen?
I would assume through genetic and paleontological similarities.
And so, what bones could they compare them to be similar?
They could compare. I mean, like I would assume they would share similar bone structure combined with the fact that they had similar genetic similarities. I would assume that they would be part of the same specimen. Yeah, yeah, and
But they don't have the same bones. They don't have the first specimen that was found down here. It didn't have the same bones that were found up here. So how could they compare the two? That
through
look, these are.
genetic similarity.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear that. What was that? Sorry.
Through genetic similarity.
Genetic similarity, and you know that how do you know that they're genetically similar? Like, have you studied this yourself? Like, or are you just believing what these articles tell you?
I mean, believing what articles these tell us. These are studies that have found genetic similarity through various different methods, and not excluding like it would not excluding molecular genetic clocks. They would maybe molecular genetic clocks lean more towards a radioactive direction, but yeah, they would essentially they would and the various genetics evidences you can find, like for instance, it's the same evidence that you would use, for instance, if you're doing a 23andMe thing. Like you just find you'd find the various chromosomes and compare the two, and if they share very very close similarities, then you would assume that these are genetically related, just like we would do with just like the fact that the human chromosome 2 shares the same dye pattern with with the chimp chromosome 2, and one that doesn't match any other human chromosome. We would assume those are apes. So, yeah, it would have to do with apes.
You guys got 1 minute left.
Oh, so you, I guess I'll give my thought. Then, and when they found out that they put the bones in the wrong spots, when they reconstructed Arachacetus, when they realized that they put the bones in the wrong spots, they said they didn't retract their claims that they evolved into whales. They just, or that they were wrong about it. They just simply published another article and said, "Hey," and just said, "This is what it looks like," and didn't actually um, address the other reconstruction. So
You notice when people had background knowledge about paleontological fossil separation within the scientific community that was looking at the articles.
And that's time. So let's actually go to the Q&A right now. So that's going to be, I'm just going to follow up with a few questions. Guys, if you guys do have any questions that you want to ask both Gregory and Guzman, feel free to enter that in there. As for me, I do right now have a list of questions right now. So we're going to go to the super chat first. And there is actually one super chat in there that made it in. So if you guys ever want to put more in there, feel free to. And the super chat from the Gym Taker says, evolution is the single most supported theory in all of science. And so how would you two respond to that? And we'll actually start with Gregory, and then we'll go to Guzman.
So the claim is, if I'm right, evolution is the most important theory in evolution.
supported.
It says from Gym Taker, evolution is the single most supported theory in all of science. How do you respond?
I would say it's very supportive. I would say it's like most other scientific facts that we would accept within the scientific community, not excluding the round Earth, but so basically, yeah, evolution is one of yes, it's one of the most supported theories on this planet since Darwin started with his Origin of Species, and the new evidence kept emerging for more and more evolution. We that's how we so yeah that's how we came about the claim that evolution
Okay,
is a scientifically supported claim. Yeah.
cool. Okay, Guzman, how do you respond to that?
What was the question again? I don't want to.
So it's actually a statement. It's from the Gym Taker. And he goes and says, "Evolution is the single most, all capital S, single most supported
Okay.
theory in all of science." How do you respond to that?
What would be your definition of science? The dictionary definition of science would be knowledge, and no, the evolution would not be. It would not count as would not count as knowledge since it's still a developing theory. And now they do have some knowledge about fossils and things like that in the theory, and uh, about genetics and things like that, as Gregory had clearly demonstrated in his in our Discord. But uh science needs to be demonstratable, testable, and provable. And so, you know, sure, evolution can do somewhat of that, but they can't. It wouldn't be the most single most proven theory, or what was it? Single most
Supported.
supported theory. Okay.
Mm.
There are a lot of supported theories, like the theory of gravity, and I believe in theory of gravity. Sometimes people think I'm a flat earther, but
Okay,
um,
awesome. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and go to the other questions. And guys in the live chat, I am trying to get to all your questions at once. So just bear with me. If I don't get to your questions, I'm sorry about that. But the next one is for Gregory, and it's from, forgive me if I butchered this, but Karag Nightwolf. Hopefully I said that right.
Yeah.
And for Gregory, how do you explain the dinosaur extinction event 65 million years ago? And is it in the Bible?
Uh, I don't really have theological grounds for whether or not it's in the Bible, but yes, I do believe the dinosaur extinction happened 65 million years ago.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that's going at. Maybe it
Yeah.
was maybe is that
Sure.
for Guzman? Was that for
Uh,
Guzman? Because I
nope. It
just
was for you. How do you explain it?
what do you mean? How do I explain it? Like
How do you explain the dinosaur extinction event 65 million years ago? What do you think happened?
I would think that an asteroid hit, as the paleontological evidence shows that
Okay.
there was an asteroid that hit dinosaurs essentially and wiped out wiped out all of them, and there are other species that continued and kept evolving through macroevolution and eventually arrived at humans. Yeah.
Cool. Guzman, do you have anything to say about that?
well, real quickly, the meteorite that supposedly crashed into the Earth 65 million years ago was a 6 mile in diameter meteorite that created a crater the size of an earthquake and created a huge layer in the Earth's crust and a clay boundary, which is called the KT boundary. And I would ask any evolutionist why does that boundary not contain any fossils in it?
Okay. Awesome. All right, and the next one is for Guzman from Maynard Saves. And it goes, for Guzman, if biological evolution is false, can you define a kind? And if Eve never ate the fruit and there was no death before the fall, would the world overpopulate animals also?
Hold on.
All right,
That's
all
for
right.
Guzman.
Yeah.
Here, here's the all right. So the first question was uh if I'm sorry, I'm I'm a little bit shaky right now.
No, you're fine.
But was there would the world be overpopulated if there was no death before the fall? Well, Adam and Eve. The Bible says that Adam knew his wife in Genesis chapter 4, I believe, in the beginning of Genesis chapter 4. So that the Bible does not mention that anywhere before then. And so no, they did not have any kids in Genesis chapter 1, 2, or 3 until Genesis chapter 4, when we read about the first children that the Bible tells us that Adam and Eve had. And in Genesis chapter 5, it gives an entire genealogy from Adam to Noah. Um, and I think there were two questions. What was the other one?
The question is, where did it go? Oh, there it is. How do you define a kind?
Oh, yes. I'm currently studying that, but there is a organization out there that is uh finding as that is trying to find as many kinds as possible. I think they found at least two 200,000, I believe, or something like that. I think it's less than that, but the Go Over Standing for Truth's channel, he did a pretty good video. He did a few good videos on that. So
Cool. Awesome. All right. And the next one is for Gregory. Since evolution, oh, by the way, this is from Landon Freeman. Before I forget to say that, since evolution is gradual and whole populations evolve, at what specific point in evolutionary history were people finally considered God's image bearers? That's a good one.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's definitely a good question.
Yeah.
I'll say people bear the image of God around when I would actually go further than saying 250,000 years ago. When behavioral modernity arose around 50,000 years ago, and people started to become more conscious of the assumptions they made about what they were doing, and started to wonder, why am I here? That was the question they asked. Why am I here? That was an existential question that they started to ask 50,000 years ago. And I would say when humans became self-conscious and had to rely on meaning-like systems like religion and eventually the wonderful Christianity, they had to come up with meaning structures to satisfy their needs to the question, why am I here, which arose around Upper Paleolithic age, and that was the existential question. When existential consciousness started to rise around humans, that's when I would say they really bore God's image. Yeah.
Okay. And Guzman, do you have a response?
no, not really.
Okay. Let me go real quick to a super chat that got actually put on by S.J. Thomason. Thank you for that super chat. She goes and says the scientists laminated evolution at Royal Society. Do you guys have any comments on that?
Not me.
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
S.J. Thomason with the super chat says scientists lamented evolution at Royal Society. Do you have any comments?
Science is limited. Could you give examples that would go against evolution? I'm not really sure what she means.
I don't know if she means. I'm pretty sure she means lamented evolution at Royal Society. If y'all have no comments with that, that's fine. I just wanted to point out the super chat.
I don't know. Like if she could provide specific evidence from the so-called limitation, then yeah.
Yeah, S.J., if you want to clarify that.
By the way. Yeah, by the way, yes. Yeah, I remember her. She said I was a child of God in the last debate. Yeah. So S.J. Thompson. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let me just check real quick. Okay, cool. And let's see. For the next one, it's also for Gregory. Gregory, what books do you suggest reading?
On evolution?
Just overall, because you have a huge mountain full behind you, and I'm pretty sure everybody noticed it in the back. But what do you recommend?
Various books. I personally like Dostoevsky's books, Demons and the Brothers Karamazov, and Crime and Punishment too. I like those books. I think they're very interesting books. And they raise questions on existentialism and Christianity. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I would say they proposed Dostoevsky proposed interesting ideas, but in a fictional way rather than a strictly philosophical, non-fictional way in which most philosophers operate. So in the sense, he's more of an artist rather than a philosopher, which is why I like Dostoevsky. Yeah.
Cool.
I would recommend those 3 books. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of people to be looking those up.
Really quickly, guys. My Chromebooks are literally about to die. I'm gonna go grab a charger real quickly.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. I guess since he's gonna run off real quick to grab his charger, I guess there's a couple more questions for you that I guess I can go ahead and ask you. Let's see. Let me just make sure. Okay. Gregory, do you believe Adam and Eve were real people or just metaphors for all humanity?
So various schools that have come up with some evidentialist groups that have gone towards more extreme ends of Christianity. They would propose that Adam and Eve was a real thing. I think they were a metaphorical representation. I think it may be probable. I think it may have occurred that they exist. Theologically, not theologically. Historically, I'm uncertain. I would need to research that more and come up with available evidence for Adam and Eve. So far, right now, you can propose a metaphorical explanation for it. As far as literally goes, I'm not sure. I need to look over the historical evidence if there is any to go over with the fact if Adam and Eve existed.
Okay. And Guzman, since you're back, I don't know if you got the question last. I just wanted to hear your response as well. Of course, I'm sure. Well, I'll just let you answer it. Do you believe Adam and Eve were real people or just metaphors for all humanity?
I believe Adam and Eve were real people.
Okay, heard that. And let's see, going for Guzman. Guzman, this is from Landon Freeman. He says, I asked Gregory this in his last debate. What is your favorite apologetics related book? And this is for Guzman.
I'm currently reading I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I'm enjoying that book so far. But yeah, I haven't been into apologetics for that long. I've only been in it for like the past year or so. And so I haven't really picked up that many books except uh those those few a few. I forget the titles, but yeah.
Okay, awesome. And to Gregory, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like go one over another. So just bear with me as I try to, weigh that out. Okay, and for Gregory, what do you believe about evolutionary psychology and its effect on the system of objective morality?
Yes, that I love that question. That's absolutely amazing. I would say about evolutionary psychology. It's a very interesting field. It talks about how we've evolved psychologically, our moral principles, how we as far as evolutionary moral psychology goes. What it talks about essentially is what we believe, how we've assumed morality with our beliefs throughout evolution. I'm not really sure. I wouldn't really grant a side through evolutionary moral psychology, but yeah, there's various studies on evolutionary psychology, um, and the reason I'd be interested in evolutionary psychology is it explains the behaviors that we have from evolution, like for instance, the fact that we have certain play instincts. That's an interesting one. That like dogs have like play circuit. I think it's dogs or cats. Yeah, they have play circuits in their minds, and we have play circuits too. And that's in fact what helps with play. It's not really just like fight to the death. It introduces a new component in evolution, which is a play circuit, and this as an evolutionary grounding. And there's various interesting evolutionary psychological views. That I espouse them. I need to research it more, but it's a fascinating field. I've really gotten interested into it the past few weeks. It's
Oh yeah,
it's such an interesting field. Yeah, and
cool.
I would espouse the views that, a lot of the views that go along with that most evolutionary psychologists, I believe, because they ground explanations for evolution. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then to let's see. Okay, so this is actually a question for both of you guys, and this is so actually the question goes: can atheists, Muslims, and people of other faiths be good individuals? Yes, no, and why?
Definitely. I mean, they're people. I mean, it's not like we can't just say we can't just say that one's like a person of a certain group. I mean, if they're a group that for instance, that deliberately do bad stuff to people, then that would be a bad thing. But like, I've met many peaceful religions from various religions across the world. I've met very nice people from everywhere, and we can't just say that if you belong to a certain group, then you suddenly moral character is flawed. You have moral flaw. You have flaw in your moral character. That's definitely. Yeah.
Guzman, what do you think?
Yes, I totally agree with Gregory. The Bible says that God formed each man's heart alike, but when it gets to the point where you reject God, like a lot of Jews do, they just reject Jesus Christ, and God hardens their hearts to do wicked things, and that's what I believe, and that's what the Bible says.
Alrighty, and also got a new another super chat from Brian Stevens, and this is actually kind of funny to me. It says Gregory for president 2050. What do you think? You think you're gonna run for president one day?
I don't know.
Why not? If you can
I mean,
if you guys can already do this at 12 years old, you might as well rule the country.
maybe. I mean, maybe. I mean, it's a possibility. I could try. Of course, I think a lot of moral corruption goes into goes in while you're becoming a president, but
Ooh, talking like a true politician.
like because is you have to resort to a lot of psychological tactics rather than intellectual tactics, and this applies to everyone. I wouldn't think that. So yeah, I would. So yeah, I would say that yeah that's the case. But maybe one day, maybe lead people to a different path than the usual political norm.
Like I said, speaking like a true politician. Guzman, you got his vote? You got your vote, I mean?
It's all corrupt. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's keep on moving on. Okay, so for Greg, do you know about John Walton? And it also says he has a lot of good and interesting views on Genesis. Have you ever heard of John Walton, Gregory?
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard of John Walton. I think he was a veteran. I think who. Yeah, I think he was a veteran, and he discussed issues on Genesis. I should maybe read on him more, but yeah.
What about you, Guzman? Have you ever heard of him?
No, like I said, I've only been in the apologetics for about the past year. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. Also, and here's a question for Guzman. Do you think there was animal death before the fall? If no, is there any verse you could give to back that up?
No. I do not believe that there was any death before the fall, because the Bible says that God looked at his creation and said that it was good, and the Bible says that he wishes that all may come to repentance. So I'm pretty sure that God doesn't please in seeing the death of his own creation, especially when he says it was good and it was perfect. The Bible says, in, I believe it's Romans chapter 5, or where it says that man brought death into the world. Man brought sin into the world, and death by sin, and by one man's disobedience shall we have everlasting life, and that everlasting life is through Jesus Christ.
Okay. And Gregor, do you have any response to that?
Sorry. Repeat the question again.
It was about.
Oh,
Do you believe that there were? Do you believe that animals died before the fall?
Maybe the animals died before the fall. I would assume. I mean, the fall is, I think, metaphorical in nature. So, yeah, I would assume that there's a historical and scientific evidence that that would happen if we're to go by traditional standards of when Adam and Eve so-called when Adam and Eve arise. Claim that it's a metaphorical story. Yeah.
Okay. And just to kind of go back a little bit, Canderman sent in a question saying concerning Guzman. What accounts for, and if just so you guys know, if you some of this stuff I actually don't understand either, I need to brush up on it as well. But what accounts for the KT boundary? What accounts for the KT boundary? I'm sorry. It's a thin layer of clay with rare elements, and so what accounts for that, Guzman? Do you have an answer to that?
The KT boundary contains iridium, which is only found which is very rarely found on Earth, but is very commonly found in space. But it's very rarely found right now. It doesn't mean that it was always so. I think that there were probably pockets of iridium in the crust before the Noahic flood, and when the Bible says that the fountains of the deep broke open, it probably pushed some of that iridium out. And actually, the iridium layer is actually 4 to 16 centimeters in thickness, so it isn't really that thin, like a paper thin. But yeah.
Okay. And Gregory, do you have any response to that?
Wasn't the sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Wasn't the question for Guzman?
Yeah, it was, but I'm letting both of you guys actually have like a 5-second response to it as well. So
yeah, sorry.
I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yeah, sorry. Repeat the question. Yeah, I'm just really tired now. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. KT boundary. What do you think accounts for it?
KT boundary.
Mm-hmm. It's a layer of clay.
I wouldn't have much. I don't have much to say on that. Like, KT boundary would. I think that it would. I mean, it would have something to do with evolution. I would assume if there was any fossils located in that thing because, and if they would date it to be like 3 million years ago, like they did with some footprints, but
It's the layer that was created by the meteorite that crashed into the Earth
right. So if
65
there's
million.
right, so if there's evidence for the age of for the fact that it was much like 60 million years ago,
I got you.
then I
Okay,
would
cool.
then yeah I would then yeah I would assume that. And if there's other evidence that would support that has to do with evolution, then I would have to accept an evolutionary account of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, and one more super chat. It's from Movie Theory, and have you guys both respond to this, respectively, of course. And it's from Movie Theory, and he says, "Sorry, atheists. Atheism is still a blind faith myth." How do you guys respond to that, respectively? Remember, we're trying to be mature here.
Amen to that.
Gregory, what do you think?
Maybe the same.
Okay. All right. Well, cool, guys. Well, that's actually it for today's debate. Just to let everybody know, check out for tomorrow. There is a huge debate between Josh Bowen and Michael Brown when you guys get a chance. So feel free to definitely check that out when you guys get a chance. It's going to be a huge debate. I'm excited because I actually get to be a part of that. So definitely want to give a shout out to that real quick to let you guys know what's coming up. Also, I'd like to thank everybody for coming on. I'd like to thank Guzman and Gregory. They've been really awesome and literally just, I can't get enough of this. I'm so glad that I got to be a part of this. Definitely want to have you guys again. So don't be strangers to the world because I think we all really did enjoy this. So thanks to you guys again for checking this out and have a blessed evening.
You too. Bye.